please join us in welcoming to the stage
Bill Hawkins.
All right.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here. In fact, I was telling everybody beforehand that they said, Bill, do you do much traveling? And I said, well, I get on an airplane and go somewhere 42 weeks a year. So in terms of being a customer of yours, I probably spend as many nights in hotels as a customer as about anybody you know. So in the time that we've got together today, what I want to do is maybe tell you a little bit about the research that we did. Okay? What did we learn? How does it apply to what you do? And what happened was 16 habits emerged, some of which even the most seasoned veterans among your sales force, well, let's get real, some of which even you may fall into, right? And can make you less effective than you need to be, than you want to be, than you got to be moving to the future. So we're going to talk a little bit about what some of those habits are, and then I want to leave here today with at least one tool that you can take back to start working on getting you from here to there. So a little bit about what the research that we did interviews, over 100 of them, vice presidents, directors of sales, regional managers, lots and lots of salespeople, from newbies on up to people who'd been doing it for a quarter of a century. And in fact, when I was talking to Tammy and Jimmy and Mike and kind of getting this whole thing started, one of the things I asked them was, can I interview some of your people? I don't want to just give a generic presentation. I want to try and kind of customize it, target it at your world. And those of you who I interviewed, one of the things you'll remember is I asked you the same questions we did for the book. I said, tell me, what kind of things are impacting you, your sales team? Okay, what are the issues in front of you? And what we found out in our research is that basically we said the game is changing. And there are 7 kind of critical areas that can impact you and your sales team's world. Now, it's going to be the rare hotel where you're going to have all 11 of these impact you. And it's going to be different from place to place. Like, for instance, the Intercontinental in Milwaukee, which, by the way, I'm going to be there in 6 weeks, right? So I'll have a cup of coffee with you. Or it's going to have maybe some different issues than the Holiday Inn in Memphis. But all of you are going to have some of these type of issues impact you at work. So this is what I want you to do is to pair up. You're going to be doing this a couple of 3 times during my presentation. So make friends with the person next to you. If you haven't introduced yourself yet, introduce yourself and tell them what your name is and where you live. Now what I want you to do is I want you to tell your new best friend which of these issues are probably impacting you and your team back at work. Now, there's no target answer here. If you've had a management change, trust me, that's one of the issues that you and your team are facing right now. Or if a Hilton Garden Inn just moved in down the street, trust me, competition is on your plate right now. But what I want you to do is to share with that person next to you what issues are on your plate right now. You got 2 minutes. Go. And stop. Now, for those of you who have regular sales meetings with your people and you're looking for kind of something new, something fun, something interactive to do with your people, this is a wonderful exercise to do with your people, right? And talk to them about in our location, in our market, right, which of these things are impacting us. Some of them are impacting you very positively. Some of them are a challenge for you, but this is a great topic for a sales meeting. I've done this about 25 or 30 times with groups, and they tend to just love it. Now, I can't predict what necessarily you and your partner talked about, but if I had to say, what would I guess that would impact this group the most? There's 2. How many of you talked about with you or you heard from your partner about either customers or technology? Let me see a show of hands. Yeah, that is just prevalent. What we learned is that customers are different. The customer selling experience is different, right? Buying is different. Right? It's like when I talked to Linda, right, who is at the Crowne Plaza at Atlanta Airport. She said, you know, it used to be people would fly into the Atlanta Airport, they'd have 2 or 3 meetings a year. Then during the economic downturn, they'd cut back to maybe 1 or 2 meetings, do something else on a WebEx. And what our challenges are today is they're still having the 1 or 2 meetings versus the 3 or 4 they might have had in the past. Customers are different. Selling is different. When I talked to Benita at the Indigo Hotel in San Diego, she goes, we know how important relationships are, but let's get real. There's times when we're in nothing more than just we're on a data sheet. right? Trying to compete with people who don't even know who we are or what we do anymore. Selling is not only different, it is much more difficult than it's ever been in the past. And customers. Customers have more information. They come to a meeting with you and your people armed with more information than ever in the past, right? And they have more options than they've ever had in the past. And they expect amenities, and they expect them up front. And the second is technology. Right? Technology is impacting you in two ways. One is think about how much technology has impacted you just in the last 5, 6, 7 years. Think about, you absolutely need it to manage your business. You need it to have the metrics and know where you're going, where the opportunities are. But let's get real. You know what it also does? It sucks up time from you and your people, does it not? And then what about the customers in technology? Do you remember when Debbie, who worked for Bill, was a key person? Do you remember when you used to sell hospitality? Right? I talked to one person who said, I bet you 50% of some of the people's business in here right now is driven by third-party people who don't care who gets the business. Right? They get their commission anyway. Right? What's happened is the thinking is that we can manage this interface electronically. See, the thinking is if we can just kind of remove that human unpredictability, inconsistency, and importantly, cost, right? It's going to be a great process for everybody. You see, the whole key is if you got the right process, the interaction doesn't matter, right? No. I've been doing research with this Marshall Goldsmith guy for going on 18 years now. You can't get 90% of the people to agree on anything. You'd have a tough time getting 90% of the people agreeing that a raise is a good thing, right? Well, 90%, and this is not just our data, it's also Accenture. Remember they used to be Anderson Consulting? They did a ton of research on this, and 90% of customer delight, 90% of customer anger, regardless of the business that you're in, whether you're banking, whether you're trying to sell cars. Of course, I come from the healthcare business. 90% of satisfaction with your doctor has absolutely nothing to do with was the procedure as effective as I thought it was going to be. 90% of the satisfaction with the doctor is, do I feel like I made a connection with that doctor and their staff, and did they care about me and my family? That's more important than was the procedure 100% as effective as I thought it was going to be. And the same thing in your world. The meeting doesn't have to be perfect, and sometimes it's not going to be perfect, right? But if you make that connection, it can make all the difference. Of course, I don't have to tell you people that. You're directors of sales, right? Now, one of the things I got to tell you, I've been doing this for a bunch of years. I always try and interview people ahead of time. And most of the time when I interview people who their job title is director of sales, do you know what they're responsible for? That would be sales. But when I talk to you, you people seem to have a lot more on your plate than just sales. Some of you are talking about, oh, well, you've got revenue meetings you've got to go to. You've got operations meetings you've got to go to. You've got team meetings you've got to go to. You've got paperwork that you've got to do, right? And your plate is just absolutely overflowing, not to mention your internal customers, right? You've got to take care of those people that saying you're giving away AV, right? Yeah. You have your plates heaping full, but let me tell you one thing that's become crystal clear. In that new world out there, you people and almost you alone live the daily struggle to integrate company needs with those changing customer expectations and changing customer behavior. It is in your office where strategy meets execution, where those wonderful intentions meet reality. Right? And you haven't figured out all the ins and the outs yet, but one thing's become very clear. The game has changed. The game has changed versus 2, 4, 6, 8 years ago when you may have done this, right? And maybe those stock answers that made so much sense as recently as 2 years ago, they don't apply. Which is why we named our book, What Got You Here May Not, and in fact probably won't get you there. So let me talk about a couple of things here, right? Let me offer some clarity. You and your people work in two primary areas of responsibility. And the first is what we call the functional area. Okay? The functional skills involve mastery of your industry and your market. Now, you notice I didn't say try and get a good feel for your industry. You notice I didn't say try and understand a little about your market. You could have done that in the past, but today that's not good enough. You have to be, I see the head shaking, right? You have to be masters of your industry, your market, your hotel, your unique offerings, right? When I talked to Kim, who's at the Intercontinental in Buckhead, in the Atlanta area, one of the things she talked about is we try and sell the Southern experience. Right? Now, let me tell you, if you're working with a company who has a proud Southern heritage, as I have in the past, and they have some international people coming in for this meeting, and they've already done the Orlando thing, that's a powerful message, right? We're going to sell the Southern experience. That's something that New York doesn't. New York's got a lot of really good stuff, but it doesn't have that. Right? It's you try and understand and sell the unique offerings that you've got. And you got to understand your customer's business. I worked with Martha Stewart and her direct report team for a year. They do 100% of all their events at one hotel in New York. Is it the biggest hotel? No. Is it the nicest? Oh, it's nice, but I wouldn't call it the nicest hotel. Is it the one they got the best price on? Oh, not even close. What made the difference? They took the director of food, who's actually called the chef, I believe, in that meeting, right, to meet with Martha. That was her hot button. And when she goes to that hotel, that chef and the staff comes out and presents on one occasion a variety of salads, on another desserts. But that's her hot button. The other stuff is kind of important, and she wants to get a good price, okay? But what's her hot button is that. Do you know what your hot button is for your customers? Because you don't have the opportunity to go to Debbie. Remember Debbie who worked for Bill Hawkins when he was vice president? She's the one who could fill you in on that stuff. Let me tell you what this team is like, right? Let me tell you what Jimmy likes, right? He likes this and this and this, right? But when you come over there, Bill, you want that. You don't have that availability. Your people have to work harder to get it. But you have to understand the competitive intelligence. And above all, what you and your people need to be is experts in doing business with you. You need to know the policies, the procedures, the people, the pricing. You need to make it so easy to do business with you, people would be silly to go anywhere else. And you got workshops. That's exactly the kind of workshops that you have right here, right? Effectiveness in groups and meetings, right? Better results with travel accounts, hotel and market segmentation, leisure's evolving market. And you know what my message to you on all this stuff is? You and your team need to be proficient on all of this. You got to be. You see, there were some of you in the past, let's get real, you didn't need all that stuff. You might be in a certain market where you kind of could live on one market segmentation. You could live on leisure. You could live on business, right? It just kind of, that worked for you in your market. Those days are gone. Your people need to be proficient in all this stuff. It provides the knowledge and skills required for them to compete in the variety of markets. It gives them the confidence they need to increase the ADR. Has there been any talk of increasing the ADR? You got to have confidence as a salesperson to do that. That's hard. When people are asking for discounts, when people are asking for amenities, it takes a lot of confidence to say, and by the way, we're increasing the ADR, right? But that's exactly what this gives you the confidence to do. So if you become expert in all of this, remember I'm the guy that wrote the book? You'll be credible in the market. You'll sell some business. You'll make some sales. You'll get by. But our point today is it's not enough in today's world. That's why we say what got you here won't get you there. You'll make some sales if you're expert in all this stuff. But to build a sustainable winning culture, you've got to focus on the human arena. It's that live interaction with people that even in today's electronic technology world makes a difference. And some of you are sitting out there kind of giving me a class. I just got data to prove this. You knew it all along, didn't you? It's that connecting with people. I'm not talking about just talking to them. I'm talking about connecting with people. Right? Where you can actually educate them. Because if you have all this functional knowledge we just talked about, you know your market, you know your hotel, you know the environment, you understand your competitor's business, you and you alone can educate them on exactly what you can bring to them that they didn't even realize was available, right? You bring them understanding and you provide them assurance. Okay? for their investment, the investment of their time, their money. Sometimes you even learn some kind of private details about their business, and you build trust with them. And the reason why this is important is it's what drives the purchase patterns. It's what builds loyalty. Loyalty still exists in this country. Some of us feel like it's gone by the wayside, but there is loyalty out there. And what we found is, as difficult as it is now to get face-to-face with those people out there, right, in those precious few moments that you've got to spend time to talk to them, educate them, build relationships with them, what we found in our research is that salespeople, some even the best salespeople on your team, the most experienced salespeople on your team, they do silly things. They do. They just do things that get in the way of them being as effective as they could be and should be. And this has got nothing to do with intelligence. Some of the most brilliant people. In fact, let me take a step aside on this. Especially brilliant people sometimes fall into this problem, right? And it's not a personality issue. Well, I'm right-brained, I'm left-brained, I'm an introvert. It's got nothing to do with intelligence or personality. What I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today are flaws in how we act with and toward other people that can make the difference. There's 16 habits that we discovered. Now, 6 are what we call primarily rookie mistakes. And one of them we call propagandizing, right? And, of course, every successful organization is going to have a theme. They're going to have rhetoric, and this is important, right? Do we have any marketing people out here? Now, for marketing, this is important. We need a consistent message. But sometimes what some of the new people do is they don't customize that message to your market, your people, your personality. And it comes across as kind of stiff, comes across as phony. Propagandizing. Kind of a rookie mistake, right? Selling past the close. All my people who oh yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? All of my people who have been doing this longer than 10 years, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Back when I was with Boston Scientific and I'd go out working with salespeople, we sold medical instruments, the actual handheld tools used to cut you open and sew you back up again. And the way our salespeople, this is like a physical object, right? And our salespeople, the good ones, could make this instrumentation just come to life, right? It's about balance, it's about feel, it's control, it's an extension. And the doctor's going, yes, I've got to have one of these. And then the salesperson would keep doing what? Selling. I have observed salespeople selling themselves out of an order after the customer said yes. How many of you have observed similar situations? Yes, selling past the close. Now, there's 4 of these that can happen to anyone, and one of them is explaining failure. And that's that erroneous idea that if they just understood what went wrong, then they'd understand and it would be all right, right? No, it doesn't work that way. No? Is that explaining failure, explaining what went wrong doesn't work. And any of us and all of us can fall into that trap. In fact, think of it at home. You kind of promised your child that you'd get home early. Oh, how about what's tomorrow? You promised that you'd get home early. You would be there in time for a Halloween trick or treat. But something comes up that you were unable to make it. Explaining to that child exactly what happened, does that make them feel better? No, it doesn't make. And explaining to a customer what went wrong. Well, we had 4 people not show up today. Right? You know what that customer's thinking? That's your problem, not mine. The people who did show up, why aren't they here serving me? That's exactly what they're thinking. And you know what the unintended consequences are when you tell your kid, even if it's true, even if what you say is absolutely accurate and true, if you tell your kid, I couldn't keep this promise to you because of this and this and this, what's the unintended message? You're not as important, right? So what you don't do is explain failure. Now, the next is obsessing over the numbers. Now, is focus important? Focusing on the numbers is important. Making the numbers is important. You reward it. You encourage it, right? But is there such a thing as maybe obsessing over the numbers? Getting so wrapped up in making the numbers in October that we kind of forget the big picture. That can sometimes happen to some people. So that's one of the habits. But what I'm going to talk about today are those 6 sins committed most frequently by the seasoned veterans. The seasoned veterans on the team, and let's get real, most likely by you as well. And one of those habits is, habit number 1, failure to be present. You know, you've got a lot of people, you got a lot on your plate right now. Huh? And in fact, it was also Kim who said, she said, we just get sucked into the vortex of emails. Don't you? Yeah. Do you remember those days when it used to just be voicemail? And now you've got emails, you've got voicemail, you've got meetings you got to go to, you got to talk to internal people, you got to talk to external people. How many of you right now, as you look at both your professional life and your personal life, are thinking to yourself, I am probably as busy as I have been in my entire life? Let me see a show of hands. Yeah. Right? In fact, that's the world we live in today, right? We're asked to do more with less and do it faster. But fortunately, you know what you have? You have tools available to you, right? You have technology tools available to you. But the problem is, what we tend to do is that we've got so much on our plate. We've been to 2 meetings. We've got one more to do here. We're in front of the customer, and the phone buzzer goes off that a message came in or a call is coming in. It's awfully tempting to check that. And it is the kiss of death when you are with an important client, okay? And you check your phone, you see the people passing by. And you know, why do we do it? The best explanation I heard was, how many of you flew here from the East Coast? That's some East Coast. And so you're going through 3 time zones. This is even more so like if you go to Europe, right? But when you go through time zones, you've got that whole kind of what they call jet lag. Right? And what happens is you're sitting here thinking, should I have breakfast or should I have lunch? I was thinking about going to bed, but is it time for bed? Right? And you kind of get just a little bit off. That's what tends to happen to us when you've got that topsy-turvy, hectic life with too much to do. You're sitting in front of the customer and you're going, what's this person's title? I've just forgotten exactly what. So, of course, our message to people is that there's one time zone when you're with customers, and that's the present. And what you do is you take effectiveness over efficiency. There's no daylight savings time when it comes to focus on your customers. Another is what we call selective hearing. Yes. Now, this is the one where you actually do get a little bit of personality involved. Have any of you ever done these personality tests, introverts and extroverts and all that? If you're an extrovert like me, who would have guessed, right? If you're an extrovert like me, listening is not necessarily one of our go-to strengths. Right? I have good news for you. It's a learned skill. And it's one that you absolutely need to learn to do. And one of the more difficult things about it is that the average person talks at about 250 to 300 words a minute. Yeah. But because I lived in Boston for almost 25 years, heck, I can ramp that puppy up to 400 or 500 words a minute, no problem at all. You'd be surprised how long I can talk at 400 to 500 words a minute. You know what the problem is? When I'm talking at 500 words a minute, you're still listening. You have capability of listening at 700. You do. That's a fact. And what tends to happen is you're sitting there with so much on your plate, so many things to think about, so much that needs to get done, and that person is talking at 200 to 300 words a minute. You're filling up the gap. What you're doing is they're talking, you know what you're doing? You're thinking. As they're talking, you're saying they're right on this, but they're wrong on that. You're analyzing, you're judging. In fact, the worst of you finish their sentences for them, don't you? Right? Okay. Selective hearing does nothing but get you into trouble. And I have some great advice on this. One of the things you can also practice with your salespeople in meetings, just practice waiting 4 seconds before you respond to any question. It is an awkward, pregnant silence. Oh, what did you have for breakfast? Right? I had eggs and bacon. But what that allows you to do is focus on the listening, okay, and focus on what that other person is saying. And the person who taught me this said, at first you just figure out what you're going to say. But after a while, do you know what you start focusing on? What you're going to say and how you're going to say it. Selective listening. Curb qualifying. Right? This comes from kind of the retail and the real estate business, right? Where you kind of qualify whether somebody has the means and motive to kind of purchase whatever they can from you. I teach the course, and I fell into this just about a year and a half ago. Do you ever remember the movie Pretty Woman, Julia Roberts? Right, and Richard Gere, wasn't it? Richard Gere gives her money to go shopping on Rodeo Drive. So she shows up on Rodeo Drive, not exactly dressed like she should be on Rodeo Drive, right? Okay, and if you remember the movie, the lady throws her out of the shop, and she's going, no, I have money. And she's reaching in. It didn't make any difference. She didn't look the part. Later on in the movie, she's walking past that same shop. right? You remember that? She is loaded down with stuff. And she just kind of ducks her head and just says, "Are you on commission?" And the lady says, "Yes, I am." And she goes, "Mistake. Big mistake." Right? But how easy is it to do it? I now live in San Diego, and I do mostly work with large companies that you noticed when you kind of read off my bio. You know, they tend to have large budgets and lots of people, and that works for me, right? So I get a phone call about a year and a half, and living in California, I've done a lot of work in the high-tech, hardware, software, that kind of business. And so I get a phone call about a year and a half ago from this company in Exton, Pennsylvania. First, watch out, geographically undesirable. 3 time zones away. Second, I never heard of them. I've been around this business for a while. I never heard of them. They can't be that big. You know what I tried to do? Pass them off to one of my partners. Come to find out, the pass-off didn't work. I ended up working with them. They have offices in 12 countries and are currently one of my very good clients. Right? I teach the class. And it's so easy to fall into, hey, I've been around. I know who counts and who doesn't count. I know who can afford this and who can't afford this. You fall into the trap of curb qualifying. Okay, or how about one-upping? Now, the one-upping is, I think this is particularly true of salespeople because we're so competitive, right? You think you sold a lot of business last year? Yeah. Let me tell you about, you think that's a big meeting? Oh, you think you've met celebrities? Well, it's and you even do it at home. I was talking to one guy one time, and he said, wait, you come home. How many of you have a spouse, partner, or significant other who works outside the home? Anybody have a spouse? So what's this person's name? Destiny. And does what? Works where? She's a cosmetologist. And by the way, does she ever have kind of a rough day in that field? And by the way, do you ever have a rough day in Fort Wayne? Just on occasion, right. So Destiny comes home. She's had kind of a tough day and says, I've had such a tough day. And in his most sensitive voice, he goes, "You think you've had a tough day? You should have been at the Holiday Inn." Yeah. We even are competitive on who had the more miserable day. I was talking to a guy the other day, and he goes, "I just did that a few months ago." And I said, "What did your wife say?" And she said, "Honey, you just think you've had a tough day. It's not over." One-upping, right? Okay, the next, withholding passion. This is especially true for people who've been doing this a long time. See, you're professionals. You take pride in your property. You take pride in your hotel. You take pride in your achievements and what you do, right? Why is it sometimes that not only maybe your most effective long-term salespeople, but maybe even you can come across maybe a little flat, can come across with maybe not as much enthusiasm as you could or should? It happens to everybody. There's all kinds of reasons why it can happen, right? One is you're just tired, right? Another is you've been doing this for a long time, talking to the same people about the same stuff. It's kind of hard to get up. Or you may have just finished a meeting or a sales call with somebody who sucked the ever-loving life out of you, right? About 30% of my business is coaching. I coach people one-on-one to help them be more effective, and they're typically rather senior-level people. And what I frequently tell them is there's going to be times where you're going to be the most senior person in the room. And you know something you've forgotten from your junior days? All eyes are on you. They are. You're looking to that senior person in the room to see what's their reaction. How enthusiastic are they? Are they buying in on this? Do they believe this stuff? And sometimes you've had a tough day. You've had a long day. That talk somebody was giving was kind of boring. And you know what I tell people you got to do? Huh? I like movies, by the way, too. Remember the movie All That Jazz with Roy Scheider and all that? And he'd worked much too long, and he had bloodshot eyes. I think he drank too much, too, as I remember, right? And he's sitting there in front of the mirror with the lights around it, and he goes, "It's showtime." That's exactly what it is when you're with customers. You may be tired. You may have had a very difficult customer last. That doesn't matter. It's showtime. And one of the things you probably know already is that 80% of purchases are made on an emotional basis. and 20% is rationalized by objectives. I did some work with Jared, right, the K Jeweler people. You know what their theme is with all of their salespeople? People buy the sparkle, they don't buy the diamond. Right? And sometimes we forget that. Right? Withholding passion. And next, wasting energy. Now, this is the one that doesn't take part necessarily in front of customers. Right? And it frequently happens with people who've been around for a while. And you know what I'm talking about? Wasting energy, talking about things that you absolutely can't fix. Right? You're talking about those decisions made over there in Atlanta. You're talking about what happened over here when the AV equipment didn't and the food, whatever that, and these people don't support, and how tough is life out there, right? And in fact, some interesting research that I saw. Now, forget the meeting where you're actually talking about a content topic with somebody, right? I'm talking about just water cooler talk. When people are talking at lunch, people are talking at the water cooler, what percent of the time that people are just talking with somebody else at work is spent on, one, talking about how wonderful, how smart, how articulate, how hardworking I am, or two, how stupid, incompetent, or inept these other people are that I have to work with. Now, you with me so far? How much? I'll give you some numbers to back this up in a minute. Go back to the person that you paired up to begin with. Of the time that people have where they're just chit-chatting, how much of their time is spent doing one or two on this? You got 30 seconds. Go. And the answer is 60%. 60% of all communication at lunch over the water cooler has to do with how hardworking, how smart, how much I try and add value to this organization, or how stupid, incompetent, and whatever these other people are. It gets you nowhere. And what happens is when you need to get that energy on that previous habit we talked about, it sucks the energy out of you. Right? For organizational excellence. So here's what I want you to do. We've gone through the 6 habits that are most likely going to impact seasoned veterans. So what I want you to do now is pair up with that person next to you again, and I want you to think about somebody on your team that you've experienced one of these habits with, and I want you to tell them a little bit about what was it that this person did, how did it impact the customer, and then the last question I'm going to say is, do you think that this salesperson was even aware of what they were doing and how it's impacting the customer? You have 3.5 minutes. Here's the list of 6 habits. Go. 3. And stop. Jimmy and Mike, this might be interesting for you guys to observe. Ready? And again, there's no right or wrong answer here, but I'd just be kind of interested to know by a show of hands, in that real brief conversation you just had with a partner, how many of you talked about failure to be present? Let me see a show of hands. Yeah, that's usually a popular one. How many talked about that selective hearing thing? Oh, biggie in this group, right? How many talked about curb qualifying? Oh yeah, Bill Hawkins was guilty of that one. How about one-upping? Yeah, that's there as well. Withholding passion. Yeah, coming out flat. And lastly, wasting energy. That talk, isn't that interesting? And once again, if you want to have an interesting discussion at one of your sales meetings, right, when you're looking for a topic to kind of get people engaged and interested, what a great idea, because we're all guilty of it, right? No matter how seasoned a veteran you are, we can fall in those traps of doing exactly this. So my content is that Peter Drucker, you mentioned I'm part of the Peter Drucker Foundation. He actually just passed away a couple of years ago, but I got to go see him once a year at a meeting. And one of my favorite comments from his was, we spend a lot of time helping people learn what to do. We don't spend nearly enough time helping them learn what to stop. And if you stop and think about it, every one of these habits we've talked about is really stuff you have to just stop, right? So may I suggest a new approach? Stop it. Just take a step back, take a look at it, and stop it. Okay? Pick one that matters to you and attack it till it doesn't work anymore. You can practice at home. Trust me. If it's that selective hearing, you may have a spouse, partner, or significant other who's willing to work with you on this. Right? You pick one to work on, and now what you need is you need a coach. And in fact, I told you about 30% of my time, I coach people. Well, what I tell them is I don't work with you every day. I don't see you in every meeting. I'm not there enough, right, to be with you as much as I would need to be. So what you need is a coach, somebody who knows your strengths and weaknesses, who appreciates your approach to work-life balance, who understands how much you have on your plate right now, somebody who's genuinely interested in your success, and somebody who could hold you accountable You know who that is? That's you. What I tell all of the people who I'm being paid to coach, by the way, right, is I say, I'm not doing this alone. I want you to stop once a week, right? So you pick one of those items that you're working on and stop and coach yourself, if only for a couple of minutes. How did I do? What am I working on? What can I do better? And hold yourself accountable. But there's one last suggestion I have for you, and that's if you could implement a process that costs nothing, right? Takes about 2 or 3 minutes a day, and I now have data back on over 10,000 people that shows it works. Would that sound kind of interesting? We call it peer coaching. And here's how, and it works especially well for salespeople, because a lot of you are in the office, right? So you kind of get a chance to have lunch with people, talk with people on a regular basis. But a lot of times the salespeople, not so much, right? They're kind of out there by their lonely and don't have quite as much of an opportunity. This works especially well with salespeople. So here's what I want you to do. So the final kind of activity of the day is I want you to think of some area of your life, not a disaster, but some area that maybe you'd be a little bit better person, maybe a little bit happier with this positive change in your life, right? And then you make a list of small daily tasks, right, that you would need to do to improve in that area, right? And then you create some questions, and here's the key. The questions have to be answered with a number or yes or no. And I have worked with people who have as few as 6 questions. That's all the questions they got. I worked with one guy who has 24 questions, right? So it doesn't matter how many questions you have. What it has to do with is what parts of your life would you like to do just a little bit better. One area is maybe one of those habits. You're sitting there thinking, wait a minute, just like that guy up there that was talking, maybe one of these habits that I'm guilty of. And I would be more effective. I would be a better leader, okay, of the salespeople in my organization, okay, if I did better at this. Or maybe something to increase your functional skills. Those things we were talking about earlier, right? To make you an expert in doing business with you. Maybe something about your family, your health, or to prepare for future success in your organization. I don't care what it is, but you try and pick something that's a potential area. So maybe an example would be failure to be present, right? So you might say, how many times did I break eye contact with a customer or somebody who's important to me today? Right? You give a number, 2 times, 3 times, 1 time, 0 times. Did you ask a customer for a moment just to turn off that PD, right? Yes or no. Next question, right? Withholding passion. Right? Did I get genuinely enthusiastic during a presentation today? On a 1 to 10 scale, how much passion did I feel? Right? No, on a 1 to 10 scale. And you rate yourself. But if you want to be more enthusiastic, if you catch yourself getting down there, just some simple questions that people can ask you on a daily basis. Or maybe it's about your health. You want to get in shape? What you do is you have somebody say, did you work out today? Right? How many minutes did you run? You want to lose weight? Did you eat a healthy breakfast? This was one of them, was mine. Right? Is that I told you how much I'm in hotels. Right? And although you always have healthy offerings, that doesn't mean that's what I always choose. Right? And so one of the questions that my peer coach asked me every day was, did you eat a healthy breakfast today? I can't always have a healthy whatever later on, but I want to have a healthy breakfast to kick the day off. What do you weigh today? Right? It's a number. Right? Or maybe you want to be a better family member. You want to be a better mother. How many minutes did you talk one-on-one with your son today? Did you say or do something nice to him? This is one of mine. I want to be a great husband. How many minutes did you spend talking one-on-one in a relaxed atmosphere with your wife today, Bill? That was one of the questions my peer coach asked me. Are you ready to feel guilty? The average U.S. father, go back to the first one. The average U.S. father, how much time does that male spend talking to his son or daughter in a given day in a one-on-one conversation? Not while watching TV, but a one-on-one conversation. What would you guess? 3. That's actually a little low. Okay? It's 7. 7 minutes, dads, we actually spend in a one-on-one conversation with the people we say we love. All right? And so what it is, and how much time do we spend talking a one-on-one conversation with our wife? All right, do you want to be a great husband? How much time do you spend talking in that relaxed atmosphere? Right? Not talking about how you want to wring the necks of one of your children. That doesn't count, right? Okay? Did you say or do? This is another one that was on mine when I did this. Did you say or do something nice for Linda, my wife, today. And what I do is I have a peer coach call me up. We coach every day. It takes about 2 or 3 minutes of time, right? And then that's what we come up with. So what you do is you select a coach. You select a coach. And in fact, you know who your coach might be? That person sitting next to you right now. Right? So what I want you to do right now, right, is to, well, not quite yet, but what you're going to do is you're going to pair up. The coach will be somebody who has your best interests in mind, somebody who can ask you these questions. So here's what I want you to do, right? Before we get to this next one, what I want you to do is to select something, some aspect of your life you might be able to improve as a result of coming to Las Vegas and attending this meeting this week. It could be something from one of those sessions that you went to this afternoon, right? To increase your ability to work with customers, to increase your product knowledge. It could be something that we've talked about here, one of those habits that can get in your way. It can be something to increase the effectiveness of your, I don't care what it is, but pick something that you would like to improve. And share that with the person next to you right now. You've got 60 seconds. Go. What do you want to improve? So here's the challenge for you. You got to pick something that you want to work on that you're willing to share with other people. So who's willing to take a risk right now and share for the rest of the group? I've got people ready to go into the audience that says, what is it that that might be something you could work on to improve yourself? I have valuable gifts for people willing to take a risk. There we go right there. We have one down up in front. Okay? Yell it out. What is it?
I want to start educating myself more, like with the IHG way of sales.
Say it again.
I said that I would like to make sure I go back and educate myself more with the resources I've learned more about, like the IHG way of sales, the sales source.
Congratulations. Would you give that woman a book? Who else? Who else has got one for it? Please, back there. Oh, back there, I see a hand.
Decided on building the right team.
Building the right team. That's exactly right. Give that woman a book. Huh? Got one right there. What's to your right? Right there. What are you going to do?
We want to spend more time being less negative and more positive.
Ah, more time. And just imagine, somebody calls you up and just says, did you spend more time being positive today than negative? Give that man a book. Thank you. So, how about it back here, right there? Speak up loud.
I'm way out of shape and I've done way too much walking, so I'm going to start walking more.
That's exactly right. In fact, my partner, Marshall, who you know, one of his is, did you exercise today? Right? It can be as simple as that, something you can do better. And one more over here, one more. Right there.
I just transitioned from transient business hotel to extended stay, so understanding my market. And I'm in the same market, so learning to sell to my extended stay business and reaching out to them versus my transient business.
That's it. And you people came up with these in just a couple or 3 minutes. Let me tell you, we have tested this over and over. What you do is you come up with a list of things that you would just like to do better. I'd like to do this to be a better mother. I'd like to do this to be a better father. I'd like to do this to be a better husband. I'd like this to do a better boss at work. 1, 2, 3, 4 questions. And then what you do is you got to make calls. You pair up with people, right? So the first thing you do is you got to determine who's going to make the call this week. Then you have to establish a time for the calls, right? And then you ask the questions. Now here's the no negative feedback ever. You're never allowed to give, like the person said, I wanted to lose weight and I wasn't going to eat donuts, right? And they say, I ate 17 donuts today. You get to say nothing. No negative feedback ever, right? Only positive encouragement. You keep a log and you send a weekly recap of this to the other person, right? So what I want you to do, just to try it, we have enough people here, I guarantee you it's going to work for somebody. Pair up with the person next to you, get their phone number, their communication with it, and agree to pair up sometime in the next week. Go. So the whole key now, just to get this started, is you've paired up with somebody else in the room. You have agreed who is going to call who on what date and get this process started. Right? And what we do is you keep a weekly log of what's going on, and it's efficient. It provides accountability. And some people say, why can't I just keep a spreadsheet myself? It's a whole lot more difficult to call somebody else on your team and say, what I was going to try and do is this, and I didn't do it, right? It has accountability. You can see measurable results, and that's what it's all about for this week. If you think about it, what this whole week for all of you have been is getting measurable results. Right? So you are here. You can get there. Let the journey begin. Thank you so much.